Yeah, let's talk about the Harvey Milk thing. I'll let Hannah Claire take this because she was a big proponent of the Harvey Milk um, Navy strip, the Navy oiler ship, right? You were a
Yeah, you're a
big,
big cheerleader for that. You're
yeah,
outside. You're like, yay.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I just remember this time very specifically. No, I don't. But I think this is funny because, of course, Hegseth waited until Pride Month to do this. So
Okay.
Harvey Milk is
Smells
obviously a leftist
does.
icon. People think that he just really made America what it should be. He was openly gay. And he's controversial for the right, as Jeremy mentioned, because he was known to have an underage, I don't know, boyfriend.
Well, how about the fact that he worked with the
People's
People's Temple?
Yeah, he worked with People's Temple. I mean, he's been glorified on one side, but I think he is ultimately kind of a sketchy guy. So Hegseth has announced that they're going to take his name off of the USN Harvey Milk, and there is totally a meltdown about it. Now, Hegseth did this knowing there was going to be a
Yeah.
meltdown. Also, renaming stuff, or sort of renaming stuff, has kind of been Hegseth's signature move of late when he wants to win public support. There are all those military bases where he was like, Bragg is back, but it's actually
Yeah.
not back. He just found another guy named Bragg and renamed the fort after him. He did this with a couple other ones, so it wasn't after a Civil War person. But this coincides with questions from the White House press corps. They were saying, are you going to put out a proclamation for Pride Month? And the Trump administration was like, no, we're not doing this. So it seems like it's a pretty clear stance on trying to dial back some of the, I would call it pandemonium over pushing LGBT
More like
history.
pandemonium.
Yeah, that's totally true.
Yeah.
Do you think this is petty, or do you think it's worth doing?
No, it is worth doing. You know what was petty? Taking down all the statues of replacing with overweight black women. Okay.
Yeah.
So by the way, I think, I don't remember if you were there, but when I declared this, but I am still a proud member of Team Low Road. So like, they did all this to our national our statues. I think Trump should put them all back up, every single one of them. Yeah, I don't care if this guy was a Confederate, war guy. So that's our history.
Mm-hmm.
Like that matters. Just you could go to the statue and flip them off if you want. Part of reprogramming. Look what they did in 1984, right? You erase and rewrite history, and that's what the left is trying to do. And so the same way with the naming of all the naval ships, and I'm 100% for it. They should, and they also did it with that mountain in Alaska, renamed it.
Denali.
What? No, who?
No, is the one in Alaska? I can't remember what it's called, but
yeah, it was some guy's name. Then they renamed it to some BS like the Indigenous People Mountain of whatever. At the Mount McKinley.
Yeah, and it was Denali. That's what they changed it to.
Denali was the woke name. Okay.
Yeah.
So they went back to, I'm 100% for this.
Yeah.
And I think we haven't gone far enough. Put all the statues back up, put open up more museums.
This is the thing. They could have put up additional statues, but you're saying your Team Low Road. I think they're worse because with the statues, they would take them down, but they would destroy them in the process, like cut them in half, damage them so they couldn't be replaced.
Melt them down.
And either melt them down or give them to Black History museums, which what do you think is going to happen to them there? I mean, it was kind of insane that they wouldn't even give them. I remember there was one dispute, and I believe this is in Virginia, over a monument that actually was a burial site for a Confederate general. And his family had to fight for them to leave it up because they're like, well, it's a statue, take it down. They're like, no, that's where he is buried. And they're like, wow, that we should be able to.
I guess.
Like it's sort of insane, but it's not just like, oh, we have to take them down. It's that we're going to take them down and then make a ceremony out of destroying them. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, it's demonic. I mean, it's ceremonial.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't, that's all on purpose. We will rewrite history. Look, I don't think a statue of, I can't name some of the ones. They were all like Confederate colonels and stuff like that or whatever.
I mean, Grant, Lee, there was tons all in not Charlottesville. Charlottesville had some, but there was Monument Avenue, and that was destroyed in Virginia. Like, this is something they did systematically. It's kind of it's obvious. I mean, it's about the destruction. It's not about saying, oh, well, this is offensive, so we'll just like put it in a museum so you can choose to see it. It's saying we want it gone forever.
Yeah, a lot of this echoes what we've seen happen in China during their cultural revolution, where the old past had to be destroyed so they could re-envision the future under the kind of communistic, socialistic ideals. And there was this kind of humiliation ritual that happened in private and in public, and there was these huge shows and these huge demonstrations. So the left kind of pioneered this. The left loves doing this. So Peak Headset renaming one kind of ship here isn't that big of a deal compared to that.
Well, that's why he has to go further.
Yeah.
He has to do like he has to start renaming some other stuff that is even more triggering. And like the idea that tearing down a Ulysses S. Grant statue somehow erases racism is like the dumbest thing ever. And all it actually does is erase the lessons that it taught us. And like, I don't understand how, well, actually, I do understand. They didn't care about the lessons it taught us. That's why they tore it down.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't want people to learn from this or learn from that. They tore them down because they want this stuff to continue. I am left with, I'm left with no other conclusion. Why else would you do this?
I mean, I think that the decision to try to delete history is, again, to control the narrative. I also think it's an emotional response more than anything else. I mean, so many of, I know we're moving away from Harvey Milk and the ships, but so much of the outcry over renaming military bases or pulling down the statues started out of the summer of quote unquote love, right?
Yeah.
Like everything happened with George Floyd, and they were like,
erase
this
history
is the time.
And uplift
Right.
our new gods.
Right. It's again playing off a level of white guilt and also this historic pain that people have over slavery and things like that. And I think rather than having productive conversations about the path forward for our nation, it's like, an eye for an eye. It's trying to wound people and change the narrative so that you are always able to win history. I mean, it's everything from people pulling down statues to also the pressure campaign at the U.S. military academies to rename anything that had anything to do with the Civil War so that no one has to think about it. And again, the dominant narrative is never that people who fought in the Civil War on either side had their own motivations. It's that there was one right way to behave and everyone else needs to pay for their sins forever.
Well, don't you think, Luke, like, for example, what do you think? My opinion is that I'm not saying Hannah Claire is saying that it does exist, but my opinion is that there actually is nobody with racial pain. There actually is nobody alive that has any pain left from the Civil War or any pain left from the Holocaust. And so this idea that, like, anti-Semitism or more racism, it's like, I'm sorry, nobody alive now or their grandpa's grandpa ever owned a slave. So, like, the idea that some 25-year-old in Oakland has, stress over slavery is just a lie. At least that's what I think.
No, Jeremy, you're so wrong. There's generational trauma that, of course, goes down.
It's coded into their DNA.
and it creates such a disadvantage for all of these people. As, of course, I think the percentage of actual slaves still genetically linked to the population of the current, black population in America is extremely low. I'm going to try to look up the percentage here, but I think it's a lot lower than a lot of people.
Nobody alive today or their grandparents nobody knows anyone who was ever a slave. Yeah. Fun fact, there's more white slaves right now than black slaves ever were.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
But you're not allowed to say that. Like,
I think that's right.
You always see that followed up with, like, you can't say, oh, well, there's no one with racial pain because you don't understand. You're not a part of it and you're part of the problem. Like, it's just this constant dodge and weaving. And I think keeping this, it's like clinging to the past without actually wanting to have a nuanced examination of what our nation was doing at that time in history, and it's measuring a lot of things by modern standards when, most of the people complaining couldn't have made it through that time. Because they're just sort of not aware of what anyone went through.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to being fact checking on that, but I know at some point there were more white slaves than source. I made it up. No, I'll look it up right now. Real time fact.
I'm trying to look up to see how many blacks in America are descended from slaves here. But Pew Research is talking about how a rising share of the black population is predominantly foreign born and doesn't have American kind of ancestry.
Immigration comes for us all. Am I right?
Yeah. This says between the 15th and 19th century, Barbary pirates captured and enslaved an estimated 1 to 1.25 million Europeans in North Africa and the Ottoman Empire. Nobody talks about those. 1.25 million European slaves. How many black slaves in America?
Yeah. And also, it's kind of interesting how the conversation is centered around,
388,000. There were only 388,000 black slaves in America. Just saying.
So out of the population,
how dare you bring up facts? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Out of that population, how many are descendants from it currently? Also, the conversation is interesting because it's always centers around. It's always these evil white people in America and in Britain. They're the ones that ended slavery first. And if you look at the slave trade that was happening in the Middle East, that was a next level type of slave trade that of course, castrated and eugenicized way more people and killed way more people and destroyed way more generations of people than, of course, this kind of American slave trade that, of course, never really is talked about.
Well, the serfs, right? And like, this was not, in Egypt, they had lots of slaves.